दासी प्रभु बोलिला वचन दुखे न मानहु यदि परिनिवेदन. After hearing the Mayavadi sannyasis speak in that way, Lord Chaitanya smiled slightly and said, "My dear sirs, if you don't mind, how humble, if you don't mind, I can say something to you regarding Vedanta philosophy." So he's saying, if you don't mind, give me permission. And this is Lord himself talking to these people who are spreading nonsense philosophy, being so humble. If you don't mind, I can say something. So again, there's a wonderful purport here. Who would like to read the first paragraph? Please go ahead.
The Mayavadi sannyasis, appreciating Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, inquired from him why he did not discuss Vedanta philosophy. Actually, however, the entire system of Vaishnava activities is based on Vedanta philosophy. Vaishnavas do not neglect Vedanta, but they do not care to understand Vedanta on the basis of the Sarkraka Sharirak Bhasya commentary. Therefore, to clarify the situation, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, with the permission of the Mayavadi sannyasis, wanted to speak regarding Vedanta philosophy. Hare Krishna.
So, Prabhupada is making the point that let us understand that nobody came and concocted the devotional philosophy of devotional service. It's very much based upon Vedanta Sutra. Who wrote Vedanta Sutra? Sorry?
Shankaracharya?
No,
Vedavyas.
Vedanta. And who's Vedvyas?
The incarnation of Lord Krishna.
Incarnation of Krishna. So therefore, whatever he says will be authentic and not something that's made up. So any commentary based on, the Vaishnavas also base their philosophy on Vedanta Sutra, except it's a different interpretation. If you recall the conversation between Lord Chaitanya and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Lord Chaitanya listened to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya for 7 days without saying a word. And literally that got Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya worried. He says, "Do you understand anything I'm saying?" Sutra. And next few paragraphs will explain further how so and why it is all genuine. So next paragraph, please.
Can I read, Prabhu?
Please go ahead.
The Vaishnavas are by far the greatest philosophers in the world, and the greatest among them was Srila Jiva Goswami Prabhu, whose philosophy was again presented less than 400 years later by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj. Therefore, one must know very well that Vaishnava philosophers are not sentimentalists or cheap devotees like the Sahajiyas. All the Vaishnava acharyas were vastly learned scholars who understood Vedanta philosophy fully. For unless one knows Vedanta philosophy, he cannot be an acharya. And to be accepted as an acharya among Indian transcendentalists who follow the Vedic principles, one must become a vastly learned scholar in Vedanta philosophy, either by studying it or hearing it. Okay, thank you.
So let's talk about three personalities: Sanatana Goswami, Rupa Goswami, and Jiva Goswami. So who was the spiritual master for Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami?
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself.
Lord Chaitanya. And who's Lord Chaitanya? Lord Krishna. So is he going to give some wrong interpretation? No, he won't. And who was the spiritual master of Jiva Goswami?
Sanatana Goswami.
Rupa Goswami Prabhu? Rupa Goswami.
Yes, Rupa Goswami. So would Rupa Goswami teach anything that's not quite proper to Jiva Goswami? No. So if you look at the disciplic succession, Lord Chaitanya, Rupa Goswami, Jiva Goswami. Jiva Goswami also had a special mercy of Lord Chaitanya right from childhood. he was so learned that he actually wrote more than 400,000 verses. More than 400,000 verses, all by one person. And all the Sandarbhas are written by him, Gopal Champu is written by him. All this so authentic. And so they had studied Vedanta, Vedanta Sutra, and other literature very, very carefully, very, very scrutinizingly. If you know the Shat Goswami's Takam, Ashtakam, Srivasacharya, what does he say? After having scrutinizingly studied all the scriptures, they have come back with the philosophy. So they were not working in vacuum. They were not concocting anything. Everything they said was based on the Vedanta philosophy. They were very well learned, very well studied Vedanta philosophy. It's just that their interpretation was not misinterpretation. Like that Shankaracharya did, of course, upon the orders of the Lord himself, but certain circumstances were there at that time because of which he did that. But then
I will read Prabhuji.
please go ahead.
So Bhakti develops in pursuance of Vedanta philosophy. This is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2.12. Tat Shraddha Dana Munayo Jnana Vairagya Yuktaya Pashyanti Atmani Chatmanam Bhaktya Sutta Grahitaya. The word Bhaktya Sutta Grahitaya in this verse are very important, for they indicate the bhakti must be based on the philosophy of Upanishad and Vedanta Sutra. Srila Rupa Goswami said, Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharatra Vidhim Vina Aikantiki Arer Bhaktir Utpatya Eva Kalpate. Devotional service performed without reference to the Vedas, Puranas, Pancharathas, etc. must be considered sentimentalism, and it causes nothing but disturbance to the society. There are different grades of Vaishnava: Kanishta Adhikari, Madhyama Adhikari, Sama Adhikari. But to be a Madhyama Adhikari preacher, one must be a learned scholar in Vedanta Sutra and other Vedic literature, because when Bhakti Yoga develops on the basis of Vedanta philosophy, it is a factual and steady. In this connection, we may quote the translation and purport of the verse mentioned in a Bhagavad Gita 1.2.12.
Sentiments? No, sorry.
Philosophy without religion is sentiment, right, Prabhu?
No. Anyway, it'll come to me. The point is that bhakti and philosophy go together. And bhakti is based on Vedanta philosophy. So there is a, excuse me, there is a verse that we're going to talk about in the next translation where it basically says bhakti must be based upon the philosophy of the Upanishads and the Vedanta Sutra, whether from hearing it or from studying it. But it must be based upon that. So like blanket statement, it must be based on Vedanta philosophy. Otherwise, oh, that's right, thank you. Religion without philosophy is sentiment, sometimes fanaticism, and philosophy without religion is dry knowledge, something like that. So the point is that bhakti has to be, in order to be authentic, bhakti has to be based upon the Vedantas and the Upanishads, etc. Right? Otherwise, anybody can say, I'm bhakta of this thing or bhakta of that thing. You know, I remember going one time to Jagannath Puri and I went to Gundicha temple, and as soon as you enter the gate, there's a tree, big tree. Somebody's standing there with 7 small stones and then made like a tower of 7 stones. They were asking everybody to pay 1 rupee and do the worship. I'm bhakta of this prayer. So I mean, you can do whatever you want, but it's not based on the philosophy, the Vedanta, the Upanishads, etc., etc. It's not bhakti. So By definition, bhakti is based upon Vedanta. And as a matter of fact, this clarified even more. This is a quotation from Pancharatra, Puranas, Pancharatra, which is the devotional service process as done by the Narad Muni. Without all that, if anybody is trying to perform bhakti, it's simply creating disturbance in the society, meaning it's not real bhakti. Real bhakti has to be based upon Shruti, Smriti, Purana, Adi, Apachara. Okay? Is that clear? I mean, that's the most important point being made. So, the point that Lord Chaitanya is trying to make to Prakashana Saraswati is that, yes, I'm doing bhakti, but don't think it's not based on Vedanta. It is based on Vedanta. And then in the translation of 1.2.12, that has been copied from Srimad Bhagavatam actually. So let's read that. Somebody wants to read this translation?
Who I'll read?
Please go ahead, yeah.
Translation. Bhagavatam 1.2.12. The seriously inquisitive student or sage will equipped with knowledge and detachment realizes their absolute truth by rendering devotional service in terms of what he has heard from the Vedanta Sutra, Shruti. Purport. The absolute truth is realized in full by the process of devotional service to the Lord, Vasudev, or the personality of Godhead, who is full-fledged absolute truth. Brahman is his transcendental body, effulgence, and Paramatma is his partial representation. As such, Brahman or Paramatma realization of the absolute truth is but a partial realization. There are 4 different types of human beings: the karmis, the jnanis, the yogis, and the devotees. The karmis are materialistic, whereas the other 3 are transcendental. The first class transcendentalists are the devotees who have realized the Supreme Person. The second class transcendentalists are those who have partially realized the plenary portion of the absolute person. And the third class transcendentalists are those who have barely realized the spiritual focus of the absolute person. As stated in Bhagavad Gita and the other Vedic literatures, the Supreme Person is realized by the devotional service, which is backed by full knowledge and attachment from the material association. We have already discussed the point that devotional service is followed by knowledge and attachment from the material association. As Brahman and Paramatma realization are imperfect realizations of the absolute truth, so the meaning of realizing Brahman and Paramatma, that is the paths of Jnana and Yoga, are also imperfect means of realizing the absolute truth. Devotional service, which is based on the foreground of the full knowledge combined with attachment from the material association, and which is fixed by dint of the oral reception of the Vedanta Shruti, is the only perfect method by which the seriously inquisitive student can realize the absolute truth. Devotional service is not, but therefore meant for the less intelligent class of transcendental.
Thank you.
There are
This Vadanti Tattvavidas Tattam Yad Jnanam Advayam Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagwaniti Shabdate. It's saying that absolute truth is known in 3 features: Brahman effulgence, Paramatma the super soul, and Bhagwan the personal feature of Supreme Personality of God. And so here, the reference being made is that those who only understand the Brahman effulgence aspect of the absolute truth are the lowest kind of transcendentalists. Right? And transcendentalists have been defined as either jnani, or yogi, or bhakta. Right? So you have karmi and transcendentalists. Karmi, as we know, fruitive activities, and then transcendentalists are jnanis, yogis, and devotees. Text 7.
127.
It says, Vasudeva Bhagavate Bhakti Yogen Prayojita Janeti Ashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayat Bhatukam. It's saying that the person who's performing pure devotional service, he automatically gets the knowledge and the renunciation required to continue with his devotional service. And I'll give you an example of Gaur Kishodas Babaji Maharaj. Who was he?
Spiritual master of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur.
Right, exactly. So he was, Gaur Kishodas Babaji Maharaj was totally illiterate. And Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj was so illiterate that he was given the title Siddhanta Saraswati, which means pinnacle of knowledge. Pinnacle of knowledge. So that personality whose pinnacle of knowledge is begging the illiterate person for initiation. It must be something that we don't understand why. Right? He must be seeing something. So what he's seeing is that the so-called illiterate person is the pure devotee, therefore all the knowledge of scriptures is automatically revealed to him without having to study the Vedas or the scriptures. Right? Krishna says Bhagavad Gita also, Bhaktya Mam Abjana. Only by devotional service can you know me. Which means devotional service gives you knowledge. Right? Okay, because you don't have bhakti for you, bhakti for him. Bhakti is bhakti. Okay? We may be impure, we may not be pure, but bhakti itself doesn't change. And that bhakti is based upon Vedanta. Uddhava was a very close friend and cousin of Lord Krishna. He was so intelligent that Lord Krishna would actually go to him for advice. The Supreme Personality of Godhead going to somebody for advice, then imagine what a special person he would be. But he did not understand pure devotional service. He had jnana, but he didn't understand pure devotional service. And he did when he met the gopis. Yeah.
Kashmiri denied that these are simply village girls, and then she stays in Vaikuntha, and she cannot go to Govrindavan because she never chose that.
She was refusing to surrender.
Yeah, because she considered gopis as mere village girls, and she was like, I am.
Yeah, so the knowledge was lacking, devotional service. I mean, you wouldn't say the devotional service lacking, but it's a different kind of devotional service. Right? There's a difference between the devotional service of when Lakshmi is pure devotee, after she's an expansion of Radharani. The mood is different, but purity is there. It's a different mood. That mood is complete knowledge of opulence of the Lord. Gopi Bhav is complete lack of knowledge of the Lord's opulence. So very different moods. Okay?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Also, that Brahman Prabhuji who didn't know how to read and he was looking at the picture of Arjuna and Krishna.
Yes. This is Srirangam logic. Okay? Alright. Let's read the next paragraph.
I can try, Prabhuji.
Please go ahead.
There are three classes of devotees, namely first, second, and third class. The third class devotees are neophytes who have no knowledge and are not detached from the material association, but who are simply attracted by the preliminary process of worship the deity in the temple are called material devotees. Material devotees are more attached to material benefit than transcendental profit. Therefore, one has to make definite progress from the position of material devotional service to the second class devotional position. In the second class position, the devotee can see four principles in the devotional line, namely the personality of the Godhead, his devotees, the ignorant, and the envious. One has to raise himself at least to the stage of second class devotee and thus become eligible to know the absolute truth.
He understands that his deity is God.
Yeah.
Okay? They also understand who's a devotee, who's not a devotee. Right? So the second. And they treat them properly. Then they're saying the two other types of devotees, or the non-devotees, one is ignorant or innocent. They just don't know anything. And the third, the last kind is envious, that they're actually envious of the God, of the Lord. They're envious of Krishna. They're envious of devotees. So the reason has been pointed out is a second class devotee knows to not deal with the envious.
Okay.
Okay? But they deal with the other.
A third class devotee, therefore, has to receive the instruction of devotional service from the authoritative source of Bhagavad The number of Bhagavad is the established personality of devotee, and the other Bhagavata is the message of Godhead. The third class devotee therefore has to go to the personality of devotee in order to learn the instructions of devotional service. Such a personality of devotee is not a professional man who earns his livelihood by the business of the Bhagavatam. Such a devotee must be representative of Sukdev Goswami, like Sutta Goswami, and must preach the cult of devotional service for all round benefit for all people. A neophyte devotee has very little taste for hearing from the authorities. Such a neophyte devotee makes a show of hearing from the professional men to satisfy his senses. This sort of hearing and chanting has spoiled the whole thing. So one should be very careful about the faulty process. The holy message of Godhead, as included in the Bhagavad Gita or in the Srimad Bhagavatam, are undoubtedly transcendental subjects. But even though they are such transcendental matters are not to be received from the professional men who spoils them as the serpent spoils milk simply by a touch of his tongue.
Right. So very good point. So see, the reference is being made here are these professional Bhagavatam speakers. So they do Bhagavatam Saptah. They charge a lot of money. And half the time they're singing songs with nice music. They're good singers that attracts people. But we'll go and enjoy the singing and say, ah, bahut badhiya, maza aaya. Very nice. But there's hardly any substance. Their character is very doubtful. And we know of some people, I'm sure, who adopt these professional speakers who are now in jail for all sorts of criminal activities. So Prabhupada is saying, when you hear Srimad Bhagavatam, which is pure, the messages in Bhagavatam are messages about Krishna, which is pure. But when that pure message from pure book about the pure person, personality I should say, is heard from a third class devotee or what you call a professional speaker who's not a devotee, that is spoiled just like the milk touched by the lips of a serpent is spoiled.
I have a question. Is it okay to ask?
Go ahead. Please, go ahead.
And also one comment.
Sure.
So, when you mentioned that you belong to the third class devotee, this is what I was thinking in my mind. All all first class devotees think they are third class. To discriminate to hear from, discriminate whom we are hearing from. So we won't be committing any offense there, oh, I want to hear from only a first class pure devotee. So how do we cross that line, or how do we
I'm
not
glad
cross?
you asked that question. So I was talking about people in ISKCON versus not in ISKCON. And especially, what you call the Hindu temples where you have all the gods are there. Lakshmi ji is there, Narayan is there, Saraswati ji is there, Parvati ji is there, Shiv ji is there, other demigods are there, Ramchandra is there, and there's no focus. In that place, you can know that you're not hearing the pure message. But everybody's gone. Right? So that's what I meant. Now, if you're talking about within this con, then it would be an offense to say, God doesn't know much, so I'm not going to go to his class. But, let's say Katanga Prabhu knows everything, so I'll go to his class. That would be an offense. Because as long as Rupanuga is also repeating only what Prabhupada has said, my method may not be good, I may not be attractive in terms of my speech, etc. But that should not be a reason for you to not attend my class. Go ahead, Prabhu. Yeah.
Like a sincere devotee must therefore be prepared to hear the Vedic literature like the Upanishads, Vedanta Sutra, and other literatures left by the previous authorities or Goswamis for the benefit of his progress. Without hearing such literatures, one cannot make actual progress. And without hearing and following the instructions, the show of devotional service becomes worthless and therefore a sort of disturbance in the path of devotional service. Unless, therefore, devotional service is established on the principles of Shruti, Smriti, Purana, and Pancharatra authorities, the make show of devotional service should be at once be rejected. An authorized devotee should never be recognized as a pure devotee. By assimilation of such messages from the Vedic literatures, one can see all the pervading localized aspect of the personality of Godhead within his own self constantly. This is called samadhi. Correct.
So basically, Prabhupada said in much better way than I was saying. This is basically what I was saying. You know, you have to be careful about people who don't understand the message. They're doing making a show of this, and that's very hurtful because we are innocent. We don't know. Okay, he says without hearing and following the instructions. So if they're not following the instructions, the message that will come out is not going to be pure. Hear that message, we get their consciousness and we become contaminated. And that's the last thing we need. Okay?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment there. First of all, most of these people come to give lectures and hold discourses in the different temples. They have been invited by the management, first of all, to promote the temple. The second thing, it will attract the more people to those temples, and that will financially benefit them. And most of these speakers comes there, they charge certain fees to come there. They don't come like to deliver the lectures free. And the other thing is, what kind of preaching, what kind of principle they tell about the religion when they come there. When somebody goes there and listen to them, what we get out of that is nothing basically. They don't tell you to follow certain rules and regulations, and they don't teach you any kind of way what you have to follow and what you got to do in your daily life.
That's right. That's right.
And the other thing is, our Guru Maharaj specifically mentioned that stay within the ISKCON, don't leave ISKCON. ISKCON can preach you from the beginning right to the end. And there are the philosophy, what you have just spoken, Prabhupada has left such a vast literature which we can never study. I could say myself could never finish up with his books in my whole life. Doesn't matter how much effort I do that. So why one thing what you have mentioned, there is no reason to leave ISKCON, or we don't need to study any books from outside ISKCON.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Yes, that's correct. Okay, let's do 103. Yashani